Okay, everybody, welcome. Good evening. I've got a special guest tonight. None other than Michele Woodhouse was formerly a candidate for that was NC House 11. Is that right?
Yes.
All right. And Michele, as you know, you are our favorite, like, period, because of your strong stance, namely about what we're going to talk about tonight, but your, fidelity to improving education and getting rid of nonsense like social emotional learning, critical race theory, all the other stuff. So, welcome to tonight's show.
Thank you for having me. I'm so excited to talk about really important issues. And thank you for all the work that you're doing to help protect families in North Carolina and around the country. We need warriors like you, Sloan, and all that are following you so that we can save our children and save our country because they are the future.
Absolutely. And it's not only the future. Obviously, the children are very important, but we understand that, you know, communism comes into countries in one of three ways. And we have all three: media, we understand that; education, we understand that; healthcare as well. And right now we're under full assault. It's a merging of all three. We're seeing gaslighting on an epic level. And it does require people like you, people like me, our organization, to lead the way and speak out very strongly about the nonsense that's going on. If you told me 10 years ago, or you or any of us, that hey, you would have to elbow your way onto the sports field, right, if you're a girl, for the first time ever, and have to fight against being a spectator in your own sport, we would have said you're crazy.
Mhm. Absolutely. And I was an athlete growing up. Was a total tomboy as a kid. And I was having this conversation with my parents not too long ago when we found a picture of me. I was maybe 7 or 8 years old, and blue jeans and scabbed up elbows, and I'm sure scabbed up knees under those jeans. And I was just a little tomboy, and I wanted to play in the dirt and play kickball and play play sports, which is what I did. But sadly, in today's world, that little girl would have been told by a teacher with no experience, completely outside of their scope, that I really should become Michael, and we're going to keep this secret from my parents. And that is unbelievable to me. That I have a degree in education. Can you imagine at 22 years old, fresh out of college, with a degree in English, that I was going to be advising children on their gender identity in second and third grade? But it's happening right here in North Carolina, and people are foolish if they're not paying attention to that. And it's happening across our country.
Yeah, it really is. And I'm sure that one thing you just mentioned keeps a lot of good teachers, running for the hills when it comes to teaching that kind of crap. And we've been hearing for the last 2 years, really, that a lot of teachers are not only forced to take these stupid DEI trainings repeatedly, some even on a monthly basis, they are just exactly what you said, forced to teach this garbage and forced to say that, hey, there's more than two genders. That's completely bogus. It's weird.
Right. Well, and I think there are teachers or people in college now that are going to go into teaching because they see it as a platform to teach this garbage. We're losing the good ones who have a social and moral compass, that they're moving into homeschooling or private schooling. But I think we're going to see a continued growth of politicizing our public schools, and radicals moving into teaching because they see that as their opportunity to shape the culture, with the support of the public school system to do it.
Right. Right. And, I've been a critic for a very long time about Republicans, in particular, their what I thought was a very lackadaisical approach to addressing the situation. So you and I tonight are happily here to talk about a reversal of that trend, in particular when it comes to the Girls in Sports Act. So let me put something up on the screen here. So back in October, I covered a story about a girl in your neck of the woods, a junior, or a sophomore or junior in high school, who absolutely was pelted in the face by a guy, a student that identifies as a female, that has been playing for quite a while up in your neck of the woods. And it's kind of been kept on the down low. And we were the first ones to expose this problem. Girl got hurt, obviously, at having a what experts believe is about a 75-mile-an-hour ball launched at her face. So we went from 2 years ago when they were going to pass this Save Women's Sports Act, from Tim Moore and others saying, hey, we can't vote on a problem or a bill for a problem that doesn't exist.
Mhm.
Now it very much does exist. This is a huge problem and endangers women. And now we understand from Q Tucker, who is head of the High School Athletic Association, that there are at least 15 boys playing on the girls' sports team. And look, one is too many. You watch
Mhm.
the video, one is too many.
Well, and that young lady who was injured in that volleyball game, there was an effort, even out here in far western North Carolina, which is incredibly conservative. This happened um, in the Cherokee and Macon County area, and very, very conservative area. So even the media here tried to cover up the story. This wasn't happening in Durham or Chapel Hill or somewhere where you've got a liberal community with a progressive agenda. This was in a small community, a very conservative community, and this young lady is going to have long-term consequences from this injury, concussion, traumatic brain injury. She's going to be dealing with this for a very long time. And I'm glad, if this was the catalyst that got Representative Balcom and Senator Corbin to put these bills forward, then I hate that it required an injury to a young girl to drive this, because you and I have talked about this offline many times. This has been happening. This is happening all over the country. We just watched, on national news, the former Kentucky All-American swimmer who
Yeah.
was assaulted when trying
Riley
to
Gaines.
at a university. And female sports, if you even look at the statistics around it, women, successful women most of them have one thing in common: they played organized sports. It's an opportunity for women, especially with Title IX. Many young women can go to college that didn't have an opportunity to do it. But the camaraderie, the competition, all of those things are so great for young women as they're growing and developing into womanhood and into their professional lives. This shouldn't have taken so long to get here,
Right.
but I'm very glad that my representative happened to be the one that sponsored the bill, and Jennifer Balcom. And I'm glad that Senator Corbin followed suit with a Senate bill as well.
Right, right. So North Carolina becomes one of 19 states with similar prohibitions, as you just intimated. I mean, we're the last one now. I think Louisiana might have been after us, but and we haven't passed it yet, guys. So there's
Right.
a long road ahead of that. So let me talk a little bit about the bills, and then I'll walk you through the process, you guys. So there's House Bill 574 and Senate Bill 631. I'm just telling you that if you want to look it up. But it's really, they're both Fairness in Women's Sports Act, and they say the same thing, which is good. There's actually another bill that says the same thing. It says biologically, you're going to have to be a male to participate in boys sports, girls and girls, or there could be a co-ed, or in the event that you are a female and you are, let's say you're in a far-flung area in rural North Carolina and there's only a boys team, like maybe a boys baseball team, you can play on that if there's not a girls team. Now that's how they're setting this bill up. So again, Senate Bill 636 is a sports transparency bill. It's also going to have that same language. So it lets us know that they're not playing this time, right? I mean, the General Assembly is not playing, and I know that they're going to probably get 2 or 3 at least sensible Democrats in on this.
Mhm.
I mean, Michelle, we went from one bill being crushed before it came up even for a floor vote to 3 being initiated.
Yeah, and I think this is one of the things that this to me speaks to, is the fact that we picked up some female Republican seats in the House. We're still down about 7, I think, women in the House, Republican women in the House, but we picked up some really strong kind of mama bear Republicans who got there, Jennifer Balcom being one of
Right.
them, with a really strong agenda about protecting our children, protecting girls in sports. This is a hot button issue for her. So I'm glad, as a freshman member of the House, that she decided to put forth a much needed bill. And I would love to see these bills then be the catalyst to start adding in for all state funded universities in the state of North Carolina. The University of North Carolina system, those universities, everyone under that umbrella, they get funds from the state of North Carolina. And so if we can start to put in those type of limitations at the university level for our public universities, I think we could really start setting a trend here in North Carolina that could be taken across the country. So I love the bills. I just, of course, I want more. I want the bills to protect women all the way through college and into professional, semi-professional sports after college.
Well, I believe that House Bill 574, that's going to be the Fairness in Women's Sports Act. I believe that that would possibly, well, no, it says interscholastic or intramural. So that would cover charters, that would cover public schools, but you're right. So we need something at a collegiate level. But let me tell you one thing that we're not balancing for that I have to tell you guys about. We've spoken about it before. We need to put it out there. So there are two very radical legal groups in America. Lambda Legal's one that you've probably not heard about, but ACLU, of course, you have. So those two groups have been waging war in North Carolina while a lot of people have been asleep at the wheel. Let me give you an example. This summer, Lambda Legal, they were responsible for suing states individually and then bringing it to Supreme Court for gay marriage, for instance. Lambda Legal had been engaged with North Carolina with a law of birth certificates. Funny, Michelle, but when you're born with a ding-a-ling, you would be designated a biological male. That was offensive. Okay, so Lambda Legal didn't like it, and they signed a consent decree or an agreement with DHHS in North Carolina. It says, hey, if you don't feel like you should be a male or you feel like a male or you feel like a female, just get a therapist note, not even a physician's note, a therapist note, and we will give you a new, not a revised, a new birth certificate. So if Johnny wants to be Jill, you could bring that in. So what I'm wondering, what's the workaround here? I mean, how are teams and schools going to be able to verify that this is a boy or a girl? A trouser check?
What and I wonder, I think it's such a great question. With and as we said, these bills haven't been passed yet. What provisions need to go into the bills to say original gender at birth noted on original birth certificate? Some type of language so that we can make sure that we are protecting, again, the bill is appropriately titled, it's Fairness for Women's Sports. And so even for boys who identify as girls to play on a girls' team, we see the ramifications of that, the physical injuries, the difficulties around that. But if it's a boy who's transitioning or has transitioned to a girl, they still have the physical strength of a male.
That's
and
right.
So at what point do we draw the line? And I think you and I are in full agreement. Representative Balcom is in full agreement that it is the gender at the time of birth,
Correct.
not a fluid gender on a timeline. And I think it's an important issue that we have to make sure is covered in this bill and subsequent bills. And we know Joe Biden and the federal government right now are crafting a federal bill, which, their plan is in states where in blue states, maybe a purple state, an area where the General Assembly in that state hasn't taken up such a bill as this, they're going to try to put in federal legislation that make sure that any gender can compete against any gender anytime. And I thought about, as we were preparing for our talk today about this bill, Republicans, I hope, if you are an elected official running for re-election or you are a candidate considering a run in 24, look at Virginia. Glenn Youngkin won because he stood with parents. He stood with families. And you can't win in the state of North Carolina. You can't win in the country if you don't win women. And white college-educated suburban women in particular, there are 500,000 more of us registered in the state of North Carolina than men. These issues are how and why we vote the way that we vote. So take a firm stand on this and be bold in your support of protecting our children and protecting girls, not just in sports, but as you talk all the time
protecting in the classroom, protecting them from SEL and CRT and DEI and all of the other programs that the left are trying to push into our children.
Well, it's crazy. It's insane. It's against nature. They know it and they don't care. And that's the scariest part. And that is the reason why we have to keep standing. But I do want to push back a little bit, or add to the white suburban educated woman. Look, for a lot of low income students, myself included, when I was growing up, the only way out of a certain designation, right, of not being able to go to college would be to qualify for not an academic scholarship, but a sports scholarship. That is now out of reach. So there are a lot of rural women who maybe have not voted, and they're not in the political process or whatever. They're going to be more inclined to vote because of this issue, because a lot of our students come from that background. So we have to also keep in mind too that this is, and the reason why we have to keep it in mind, we're ambassadors of this, but we need to educate everybody else. When you're talking about this in your church, don't think, well, I will just talk to these folks that I know are registered. I know they're on our team. We need to start also educating others that may have, 9 and 10-year-old girls that play soccer. It's something that they're going to think about, because, every parent thinks when they're out there watching little Sally play, everybody thinks they're going to get a scholarship, right? And it is within reach. So guys, I want you to talk to everybody, whether or not you think they're in a political process or not, out there on the sports fields. That's actually where I've started up a lot of conversations. My daughter plays lacrosse. These weekend tournaments, literally, Michelle, there's probably 3,000 people out on these huge fields, right? Because they're in round robins, they play. We can be striking up these conversations, and we find out, oh, son of a gun, you've never voted? Well, now's the time to vote.
Right. And if you're not going to vote to protect our children, I don't know what would be the catalyst to get you there.
Gas prices, that's ebbs and flows. I mean, this is
right.
This is forever stuff. Now let's talk about rowdy games, because you brought this up, and it's something that we need to confront here. So, this swimmer, she competed against this dude that calls himself Leah Thomas. And she talked about, or was going on to a campus in San Francisco, right in the Lion's Den, right, to talk about what it was like for her to compete against a male, to be in the freaking bathroom when the male was right next to the stall, beside her, and then changing in front of a male she did not know. This is universally understood to be private spaces, no-go zones. Again, the left knows, they don't care. And she was basically run out of town, almost kind of on a rail, but, put in a 3-hour solitary confinement by the cops, who didn't want to protect her, wanted to protect the rights of the transgender mob.
Right. Yeah. And she was punched, spit on, screamed at. And I mean, I give her a lot of credit for going to San Francisco. That's a tough place to deliver that speech. But, I look at, where are the women's advocacy groups? Where are the women that fought so hard for Title IX? Where are those women at? It's great to see. I think I don't know if it's great. It's fascinating to me that one of the biggest supporters of protecting women in sports is Caitlyn Jenner. So when Caitlyn was Bruce and was the best athlete in the world, winning the decathlon in the Olympics, winning a gold medal for this country, then transitions to become Caitlyn. Caitlyn Jenner is the one speaking out openly and very assertively that we have got to protect girls in sports. You talk about your daughter playing lacrosse. My son, who's a senior in college now, but 6'1", 185 pounds, won 3 state championships in high school in lacrosse. I saw how those boys hit one another. It's a very different sport than girls lacrosse. Watching how physical those boys are, how aggressive they are. If there would have been a girl out there, she would have broken bones. There was no way, even with protective equipment, to be able to protect her. We see it you see it in the pool, you see it on the volleyball court, you can see it on the fields. These type of bills, and we need to support our elected officials that are getting ready to vote on it. I would
Now more
encourage,
than
get
ever.
on the phone, send emails to your representatives in both the North Carolina House and Senate, whether they're Republicans or Democrats, and tell them that you want them to stand with this bill. And I don't have kids I'm gonna have a child, one left in college. I don't have kids that are going to be coming up through the North Carolina public school system or competing in high school sports. Those times are over for me, but I'm not going to give up the fight on this. It's such an important fight. So whether you have kids or you're a grandparent or wherever you are in your life, protecting our girls from having to compete against
Yeah.
boys is so critically important, because girls, if forced, I played softball growing up. If we would have had to play with
Oh,
boys, I wouldn't have played
no, no.
because I would have been hurt.
That's a death sentence. Yeah. You can't play
Right. So we need
one
to give
ball.
them that
Yes.
opportunity.
Yeah. Um,
Yep.
well, I mean, my son's 14. He's 6'2", 185 at 14. I mean, he's going to be crazy, but he plays basketball in several different teams, right? AAU, plays for the school, etc. He asked a very practical question. He goes, look, Mom, what am I going to do if a gender fluid girl that wants to be a boy is playing on the team or just comes into the locker room and I'm nude and I'm blamed for something?
Mhm.
And I thought, that's a weird, I'm glad he's thinking ahead on that. But yeah, I mean, it puts students in dangerous situations, whether it's on the male side or the female side. And by the way, common sense. Democrats know this. They know it.
Right. Right. Well, I mean, as mothers, can we don't we don't go as women. I don't go into the men's restroom. You don't go into the men's restroom. I wouldn't use a men's locker room at a gym. Neither would you. And we're cognitively developed adult women who can hopefully protect ourselves if a situation were to present. To send prepubescent or pubescent children into shared locker room space because one child identifies a certain way is putting the rest of them at tremendous risk. And we've got to continue to have bills like this that are going to protect our girls that are trying to compete. They deserve an opportunity to do it without having to compete against boys, or because whether that boy identifies as a girl or not, he's still a boy.
Bottom
He's
line.
he's still a boy. He's stronger, he's bigger, and as we saw happen right out here in Western North Carolina, it doesn't take much to really injure someone else. And so I congratulate Representative Balcom and Senator Corbin for stepping up and putting these bills. I hope they will quickly move through committee to a floor vote and will be in place to make sure that we're protecting our kids going into the remainder of this school year and next school year.
Right. And the last thing I want to bring up, guys, is as you intimated, Michelle, we've got an issue of Biden again doing something completely against the will of the people. Nobody wants this. It's a Title IX overhaul, he calls it, where it basically is threatening all schools that, get federal dollars, that, hey, if you don't let Johnny play on Sally's team, we're going to restrict your funding. But I want to tell all of you out there, this takes a while. Okay. This has got to go up for, I think Cardona is going to put it on the Federal Registry so that people have, I don't know, what is it, 3 months to respond. And then, I mean, it takes a while. By then, Biden will be on his way out, which I believe he already is on his way out. And so that really won't affect the passage of this bill. I think I've gotten, 10 emails today alone on, wow, I mean, will this bill even, in North Carolina even get a vote? Yes, it will. This will not affect that. And no, by the way, there's 19 states. There's probably going to be, I don't know, 25, by fall. And believe me, that many states, this will go to the Supreme Court. Let me tell you how that works. It will work in this way. Well, one thing I want to say too is the West Virginia, don't read too much into the West Virginia case. It was a Fourth Circuit. You'll hear about the Supreme Court denied West Virginia. It did not. Here's what happened. There is a West Virginia case that is waiting to go to the Fourth Circuit, and the Supreme Court last week said, we're not going to get involved on an emergency appeal or emergency, interruption until that case is heard. They just don't want to break protocol. So don't get wrapped up around the axle. But look, Fourth Circuit, which is what we're in here in North Carolina, very liberal. The 11th, which is Florida, is less so, and even the 9th now is less so. So what you get, guys, is something called a circuit breaker, where one circuit says boys shouldn't be on the girls' sports team, another one says they should. That's when it goes to the Supreme Court. Let me tell you, it's on a fast track. They're already, as you know, West Virginia is already, already going to be in the Fourth Circuit, and we know of another case in Florida. So just to explain it, we've got to pass these bills. We have to have a new attorney general to defend these suckers.
Yes.
We've got to make sure that we've got it. Michelle, we are dead if we don't have an attorney general and a governor in the state. I'm telling you.
Yeah. Well, Governor Kristi Noem already came out and told Joe Biden, if this federal bill passes, her state will be the first to file a lawsuit against them to take it to the Supreme Court. And to your point, we have to look at the upcoming 2024 Council of State races here in North Carolina. And I would just urge everyone, the primaries are going to be a blood sport on the Republican side. They always are. But we have to vote for the person who can win in November, because Josh Stein in the governor's mansion is much more radical than Roy Cooper.
Oh, he's Governor Newsom on steroids. He'd be
100%. And if he gets a Democrat attorney general in his pocket, they will try to turn North Carolina into California. And the state of North Carolina has never elected a Republican attorney general. There was one appointed, but we've never elected one before. And we have to make sure that 2024 is the year that we do it, because no matter what happens in the governor's race, and we pray that we end up with a Republican in the governor's mansion, winning the attorney general race is almost more important.
Oh, absolutely. Look, this is the time. Listen, and I want you to, by the way, the time to get off your keyboard is now. The time to stop bitching and get in the game is now. Just because there's not a perfect bill, big deal. So what? Who cares? The time is now. Look, I tell you what I'm going to do is I've already asked in 2 tournaments to set up 2 tables to register people to vote at these lacrosse tournaments. Okay, whether it's time to get political. The left gets political in church. Set up something where y'all got a fair, right? You're registering votes. So everybody listening, the time is now. We need to ask everybody out there in the audience, what are you going to do to expand the electorate on our side? Because that's the name of the game.
I carry voter registration forms with me. I have them in my car. I encouraged a group that I spoke to a few weeks ago, fold one up and put it in your Bible. And a couple people panicked a bit when I said that. I said, look, 50% of people who profess to be Christians don't vote. They don't vote at all. And we wonder why we lose on issues like abortion, protecting our children, female sports. Conservatives have to get to the polls. And so talk to your neighbors, set up. I love what you're doing at anything with your kids. I mean, that's a perfect time. Sure. And pay close attention to things that are happening. If you have a child in 4-H, I would encourage you to ask them what's going on at summer camp. With the housing.
Can you spill the beans on that for a second?
Yeah.
Because,
so again, Representative Balcom is fighting this, and just so proud of her conservative principles. She happened to be speaking at an event, a 4-H event, and it was announced that at summer camp this summer for 4-H, kids can self-identify when they arrive at camp on which cabin they want to be in. So if you're a 17-year-old boy who has a 17-year-old girl friend, you can just identify as a girl, so you can stay in the same cabin with her. They're letting all kids show up to camp, and they can pick their gender for housing at summer camp. And Representative Balcom who participated in 4-H, has taken them to task. They've pulled back. They haven't canceled that policy.
Publicly.
they've pulled back and put a pause on it. So pay attention. This is happening. There can't be a more conservative Americana group that our kids belong to other than 4-H. And if they are already trying to make 4-H woke, it's happening in every organization that our kids are in. And so talk to your children, talk to your grandchildren, make phone calls, get engaged, because that and support your representatives who are willing to go to the mats on bills like this that protect our children.
Yeah. Sitting on the sidelines, being a keyboard warrior, criticize, no longer an option. We are at war. Okay. We didn't choose to be in this. We're in it. And the way that we fight back is information. So, all right. Well, to that, thank you very much for being on. Good to see you again.
Good to see you too. Thank you so much.
Okay. I think the best is yet to come with the Republican Party and what we're doing. Fingers crossed.
I agree.
We need you guys, not to guilt you guys to death, but I'm the Jewish mother that you didn't ask for and you didn't expect, but I'm going to stay on your case and guilt you to death. All right, guys. Thank you. Have a good night.